Far away in the cold, empty silence of space, something strange was happening. The Zorathians, a race of beings from another world, were baffled. For months now, their ships had been disappearing near Earth without warning or explanation. These weren't ordinary ships. They were sleek metallic vessels powered by technology far beyond anything humans could imagine. Yet somehow, one after another, they vanished into thin air. The Zorathians weren't newcomers to space travel. They had explored countless star systems, mapped galaxies, and encountered many forms of life. But this was different. It wasn't an attack. There were no explosions, no signs of conflict. Their ship simply blinked out of existence as if swallowed by some invisible force. At first, the Zorathian Council dismissed it as a fluke. Space was vast, unpredictable even for them. But when 4 scout ships disappeared within weeks, panic began to creep in. Joshua, a tall alien with smooth silver skin and glowing blue eyes, sat at a large circular table inside the council chamber. He was one of the brightest minds among his people, known for solving problems others deemed unsolvable. Today, however, he felt uneasy. Around him, other council members whispered nervously, their voices echoing softly through the dimly lit room. Holographic screens displayed maps of Earth's solar system, highlighting areas where the disappearances had occurred. "We need answers," said Council Leader Varen, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. "Our scouts are gone, our equipment fails us, and we have no idea why. Joshua, you're our best analyst. What do you think is causing this?" Joshua hesitated before speaking. He didn't like making guesses, especially not in front of the council. Still, he knew everyone was looking to him for guidance. "Based on what we've observed so far, I believe these disappearances are linked to Earth itself. There's something unusual about that planet, something we haven't encountered before." Varen frowned. "Unusual? Explain." Joshua leaned forward, tapping a few commands into the console in front of him. A hologram of Earth appeared above the table, rotating slowly. "Look here," he said, pointing to a cluster of red dots scattered around the planet. All the incidents happened within a specific range of Earth's orbit, and each time our sensors detected brief bursts of energy, like ripples in space-time, but they fade too quickly for us to analyze properly. "And you think Earth is responsible?" asked another council member skeptically. "Not necessarily Earth itself," Joshua replied, "but whatever's causing this seems localized to that region. My theory is that it's either a natural phenomenon unique to Earth's environment or it's artificial." Artificial. The word hung heavy in the air. If someone or something on Earth was behind the disappearances, it meant humanity might be more advanced than the Zorathians had assumed. Or worse, perhaps they weren't dealing with humans at all. Meanwhile, millions of miles away, on a dusty hilltop in Arizona, Laura Monroe stared up at the night sky through the lens of her telescope. She was a young woman in her late 20s, with curly brown hair tied back in a loose ponytail and glasses perched on the edge of her nose. Her job at the observatory was simple: monitor celestial activity and report anything unusual. Most nights, she saw nothing but stars and planets doing exactly what they were supposed to do. Tonight, though, something caught her eye. At first, it looked like a faint flicker, a shimmering distortion against the blackness of space. Laura adjusted the focus of her telescope, trying to get a clearer view. Whatever it wasn't moving like a comet or asteroid. It hovered near Earth's orbit, pulsating faintly, almost like it was breathing. Curious, she grabbed her notebook and jotted down its coordinates. Then she turned to her computer, pulling up data from recent scans of the same area. What she found made her heart skip a beat. Over the past few weeks, gravitational readings in that part of space had spiked erratically. Small fluctuations at first, but growing stronger with each passing day. Laura scrolled through pages of numbers, her brow furrowing deeper with every click. Something big was happening out there, and she had a feeling it wasn't natural. She glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight, and the rest of the observatory staff had already gone home. Normally, Laura would have called someone to share her discovery, but tonight she hesitated. People here didn't take her seriously. To them, She was just the quiet girl who spent too much time staring at the stars. If she told them about this, they'd probably laugh it off or accuse her of misreading the data. No, Laura decided. This was something she needed to figure out on her own, for now at least. She opened a new file on her computer and started compiling everything she could find: orbital patterns, energy signatures, historical anomalies. As she worked, a pattern began to emerge. Each spike in gravitational activity coincided with reports of strange lights or objects appearing near Earth. Some of these stories dated back decades, long before anyone had telescopes powerful enough to detect such things. Laura leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Was it possible? Could Earth really be surrounded by some kind of invisible barrier, or worse, a trap? She shook her head, dismissing the thought. That was ridiculous. Humans didn't have the technology to create something like that. Did they? Back aboard the Zorathian mothership, Joshua stood alone in the observation deck, gazing out at the swirling clouds of Earth below. Despite the mystery surrounding the planet, he couldn't help but admire its beauty. Blue oceans, green continents, and swirling white clouds. It was unlike any world he'd ever seen. Life thrived there, wild and untamed, yet fragile compared to the cold precision of the Zorathians' own civilization. He wondered what the humans were like. Primitive, according to most reports. Warlike, prone to violence and greed, yet capable of creativity and innovation in ways his own people struggled to understand. Could they truly be responsible for the disappearances? Or was something else lurking beneath the surface, waiting to strike? As Joshua pondered these questions, an alert flashed across his wristband. Another ship, one of their fastest cruisers, had vanished while attempting to investigate the anomaly. His stomach sank. Whoever or whatever was behind this wasn't playing games anymore. Every disappearance brought them closer to war, whether intentional or not. Joshua clenched his fists, determination hardening his expression. He wouldn't let fear dictate his actions. Whatever was happening near Earth, he would uncover the truth, even if it cost him everything. And somewhere, light years away, Laura Munro continued her work, oblivious to the fact that her discoveries might hold the key to saving two worlds or destroying them both. The Zorathians were running out of options. After losing yet another ship, the Council decided it was time to take a more aggressive approach. They couldn't keep sending small scout vessels into the unknown. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. Commander Kyle, a seasoned leader with sharp green eyes and a reputation for making tough decisions, was put in charge of the mission. His orders were clear: send a larger reconnaissance ship closer to Earth, equipped with advanced sensors and recording devices, to gather as much data as possible. Kyle stood on the bridge of the reconnaissance vessel, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Around him, the crew moved with quiet efficiency, preparing for their journey into the danger zone. The ship hummed softly as its engines powered up, ready to leave the safety of the mothership. Cale glanced at the view screen, where Earth loomed large, its blue oceans shimmering under the light of its sun. He didn't like this assignment. It felt reckless, but he had no choice. The future of his people depended on understanding what was happening near that strange planet. As the ship approached Earth's orbit, the tension aboard was palpable. Every member of the crew knew the risks. They had seen the reports, heard the stories of ships vanishing without warning, but they also knew their duty. If anyone could solve this mystery, it was them. On Earth, Laura Munro was having trouble sleeping. Her mind kept replaying the data she had collected over the past few nights. The gravitational spikes, the flickering distortions in space. None of it made sense. She spent hours poring over old research papers, hoping to find some clue that might explain what she was seeing. But nothing matched. Whatever was happening near Earth was unlike anything documented before. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, startling her out of her thoughts. It was Ethan Brooks, a freelance journalist who frequently reached out to her for quotes or expert opinions on astronomy-related topics. Ethan wasn't exactly a scientist. He preferred writing about conspiracy theories and unexplained phenomena, but he had a knack for asking the right questions. Laura sighed as she answered the call. "Hey, Ethan," she said, trying to sound cheerful despite her exhaustion. "What's up?" "I've got a story I think you'll want to hear," Ethan replied, his voice brimming with excitement. "People are reporting strange lights in the sky again, this time near Arizona. And get this. One witness claims they saw something disappear right in front of their eyes." Laura froze. "Disappear? Like vanish into thin air?" "Exactly," Ethan said. "I thought of you because of your work at the observatory. Any chance you've noticed anything unusual lately?" Laura hesitated. She wanted to tell him everything, the gravitational anomalies, the shimmering distortion, but she stopped herself. What if he published her findings prematurely? What if people dismissed her as crazy? Still, Ethan had a way of digging deeper than most reporters. If anyone could help her piece together the puzzle, it might be him. "Maybe we should meet," she said finally. "There's something I need to show you." The next morning, Laura met Ethan at a small cafe near the observatory. She brought her laptop, filled with charts, graphs, and notes from her research. As she explained what she had discovered, Ethan listened intently, scribbling notes in a worn notebook. By the time she finished, his eyes were wide with amazement. "This is incredible," he said, leaning forward. "You're saying there's some kind of portal or wormhole near Earth? Something powerful enough to swallow entire objects or even ships?" "That's just a theory," Laura cautioned. "But it fits the data. The gravitational spikes coincide with sightings of strange lights, and the pattern suggests these events happen during specific solar alignments." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "If you're right, this could change everything. Imagine if humanity isn't alone in the universe, and imagine if someone or something is using Earth as a gateway." Laura frowned. "That's the part I don't understand. If there really is a portal, who's controlling it? And why? Now?" Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed loudly. He glanced at the screen, then held up a finger to silence Laura. "Sorry, I have to take this." He stepped outside, leaving Laura to ponder his words. A few minutes later, Ethan returned, looking pale. "That was my source," he said, lowering his voice. "They sent me footage taken last night by an amateur astronomer. You need to see this." He opened a video file on his phone and handed it to Laura. The clip showed a dark sky dotted with stars. Suddenly, a bright flash illuminated the frame, followed by a swirling vortex of light. For a brief moment, the vortex seemed to stabilize, revealing what looked like a metallic object caught in its grip. Then, just as quickly, the vortex collapsed, and the object vanished. Laura stared at the screen, her heart racing. "That's it," she whispered. "That's proof." Ethan nodded grimly. "And it gets worse. My source says similar footage has been circulating online, but most of it's being deleted or censored. Someone doesn't want this getting out." Unbeknownst to Laura and Ethan, their conversation hadn't gone unnoticed. High above Earth, the Zorathian reconnaissance ship hovered silently, its sensors scanning the planet below. One of the crew members, a young technician named Lyra, noticed a spike in energy readings coming from the region where Laura and Ethan were meeting. "Commander," Lyra called out, her voice tinged with urgency, "we're detecting unusual activity near the surface. It matches the patterns we've observed before." Kyle strode over to her station, his expression unreadable. "Show me." Lyra pulled up the data on her monitor. Sure enough, there was a faint but distinct ripple in space-time emanating from the area. Kale studied it carefully, his mind racing. Could the humans be involved? Was this evidence of some kind of technology they hadn't anticipated? "Prepare a drone for deployment," Kale ordered. "We need visual confirmation." Minutes later, a small Zorathian probe detached from the ship and descended toward Earth. Its cameras captured images of the cafe where Laura and Ethan sat, oblivious to the alien presence watching them. The probe hovered briefly, recording their movements before returning to the ship. Back on the bridge, Cal reviewed the footage. The two humans appeared ordinary enough, a young woman with glasses and a scruffy man with a notebook, but their actions suggested they knew more than they should. Cal frowned. If the humans were aware of the anomaly, It meant they posed a potential threat, or perhaps an opportunity. We'll monitor them, Cale decided. For now, let's see what else they uncover. That evening, Laura and Ethan returned to the observatory to continue their investigation. Using the coordinates from the amateur astronomer's footage, they recalibrated the telescope to focus on the exact spot where the vortex had appeared. To their astonishment, they detected residual energy lingering in the area, a faint echo of whatever had caused the phenomenon. "This is real," Laura murmured, staring at the readings. "Whatever it is, it's not random. It's deliberate." Ethan nodded, "Which means someone, or something, is behind it. The question is who?" As they worked, neither of them realized they were being watched, not just by the Zorathians, but by forces far closer to home. Somewhere deep underground, hidden away from prying eyes, a group of scientists had been studying the same anomaly for years. Their experiments had started innocently enough, driven by curiosity and ambition. But now, those experiments had spiraled, out of control, creating ripples that extended far beyond Earth's atmosphere. Little did Laura and Ethan know, their search for answers would soon lead them straight into the heart of a secret that could alter the course of human history, and bring two worlds closer to collision than ever before. The Zorathian reconnaissance ship was now closer to Earth than ever before. Commander Cale stood on the bridge, his sharp green eyes fixed on the view screen as the planet rotated slowly beneath them. The crew worked silently, their movements precise and efficient. They had deployed another drone to investigate the anomaly, this time equipped with enhanced sensors designed to capture even the faintest traces of energy. But despite their advanced technology, Cale couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. "Commander," Lyra called out, breaking the silence, "we're picking up increased activity in the same region as before. The energy readings are spiking." Cale turned to her station, his expression grim. "Show me." Lyra pulled up the data on her monitor. The screen displayed a swirling mass of colors representing the chaotic energy emanating from the anomaly. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, growing stronger with each passing moment. Cale leaned closer, studying the patterns carefully. He had seen similar fluctuations during previous missions, but this time, there was something different, a strange resonance that seemed to echo through space itself. "We need to move in. Closer," Cale said finally. "Prepare the ship for descent." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Descending into Earth's atmosphere was risky, especially given the disappearances of their other vessels. But Cale's tone left no room for argument. They followed his orders without hesitation, powering up the engines and adjusting their trajectory. Meanwhile, on Earth, Laura Monroe and Ethan Brooks were making progress. Using the residual energy readings they had detected at the observatory, they managed to pinpoint the exact location where the vortex had appeared. It was a remote area deep in the Arizona desert, far from any towns or cities. Armed with maps, flashlights, and recording equipment, they set out to investigate. The drive took hours, and by the time they arrived, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Laura stepped out of the car, her eyes scanning the horizon. The air was dry and cool, carrying the faint scent of dust and sagebrush. She felt a strange sense of unease, as if the ground beneath her feet was holding its breath. "This is it," Ethan said, consulting the GPS on his phone. "According to the coordinates, the anomaly should have happened right here." Laura nodded, pulling out a handheld scanner she had brought along. As she activated it, the device began emitting soft beeps, indicating the presence of residual energy. She moved slowly, sweeping the scanner back and forth until the beeping grew louder. "There's definitely something here," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's faint, but it's real." Ethan crouched beside her, snapping photos of the area with his camera. "Do you think it's connected to those portals we saw in the footage?" "I don't know," Laura admitted. "But whatever it is, it's powerful enough to leave an imprint. That's not something natural forces can do." As they continued their search, neither of them noticed the faint shimmer in the air above them. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, like heat waves rising from the desert floor. But it was there, pulsing softly, waiting. High above, The Zorathian reconnaissance ship entered Earth's atmosphere. The crew braced themselves as the vessel descended, its hull glowing red-hot from friction with the air. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then, without warning, the ship lurched violently, throwing everyone off balance. "What's happening?" Cale demanded, gripping the edge of his console. "The anomaly," Lyra shouted, her fingers flying over her controls. "It's destabilizing our systems." On the view screen, the swirling vortex appeared again, larger and more intense than ever before. It stretched toward the ship, pulling it inexorably closer. Alarms blared as the crew scrambled to regain control, but it was no use. The vortex enveloped the ship in a blinding flash of light and then silence. When the light faded, the ship was gone. Back on the ground, Laura and Ethan froze as the sky above them erupted in color. The shimmering distortion expanded rapidly, engulfing the horizon in a kaleidoscope of shifting hues. Laura shielded her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. "Did you see that?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. "That thing just swallowed a ship." "A ship?" Laura repeated, stunned. "You mean one of ours?" "No," Ethan said, shaking his head. "Not ours. Look." He pointed to the sky, where faint trails of smoke lingered in the wake of the vanished vessel. The design of the craft was unlike anything human-made. Its sleek metallic surface and glowing blue lights marked it as alien. Laura stared at the spot where the ship had disappeared, her mind racing. If that really was an alien ship, then we're dealing with something much bigger than we thought. Before Ethan could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. The shimmering distortion began to shrink, folding in on itself until it vanished completely. The desert returned to its usual stillness as if nothing had happened. Inside the Zorathian ship, chaos reigned. The crew stumbled to their feet, disoriented and frightened. Their instruments were malfunctioning, their screens flickering erratically. Worst of all, they had no idea where they were. "Status report," Cale barked, his voice cutting through the confusion. "We're somewhere else," Lyra stammered, her hands trembling as she tried to make sense of the readings. "The anomaly transported us to a different region of space, but I can't determine our exact location." Cale clenched his fists, struggling to keep his composure. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to gather data, not get trapped in some unknown part of the galaxy. He turned to the view screen, which displayed a star field unlike any he had seen before. The stars were dimmer, farther apart, and arranged in unfamiliar constellations. "Can we reverse the process?" he asked. "Can we return to Earth?" Lyra hesitated. "I'm not sure. Our systems are damaged, and the anomaly isn't stable. If we try to recreate it, we risk being pulled even farther away, or worse." Cale sighed, running a hand over his face. He had always prided himself on his ability to stay calm under pressure, but this situation tested even his resolve. His people were counting on him to solve the mystery, yet here he was, stranded in uncharted territory. Back on Earth, Laura and Ethan hurried back to the observatory to analyze what they had witnessed. They spent hours reviewing the footage and data, trying to piece together how the portal worked. Laura became increasingly convinced that it wasn't a natural phenomenon. It had to be artificial. Someone somewhere had created it. Ethan agreed. If aliens are involved, maybe they're not the only ones using this technology. What if humans built it too, or found it? Laura frowned. That's possible, but why would anyone build something so dangerous? Those portals aren't just opening doors, they're tearing holes in reality. As they debated, they failed to notice the shadowy figure watching them from the edge of the observatory grounds. It was a man in his 50s, dressed in plain clothes with a weathered face and piercing gray eyes. He had been following their investigation for days, listening to their conversations, observing their every move. Finally, he stepped forward, clearing his throat to announce his presence. Laura and Ethan spun around, startled. "Who are you?" Laura demanded, clutching the scanner protectively. "My name is Daniel," the man said calmly, "and I think it's time we had a talk." Without waiting for a response, he gestured for them to follow him. Reluctantly, Laura and Ethan complied, their curiosity outweighing their caution. Daniel led them to a nearby truck and handed them each a folder filled with documents and photographs. "These will explain everything," he said simply. "But first let me tell you about Project Gateway." Daniel revealed that he was part of a secret government initiative tasked with researching interdimensional travel. Decades ago, scientists had accidentally discovered a way to manipulate space-time, creating portals that could transport objects, or people, to distant locations. At first, the project was hailed as a breakthrough, but it quickly spiraled, out of control. The portals were unstable, unpredictable, and sometimes deadly. Worse, they attracted attention from beings beyond Earth's understanding. "We shut down the program years ago," Daniel explained. "Or at least, we thought we did. Apparently, some of the portals are still active and they're causing problems for both sides." Laura stared at the documents in shock. Everything she had observed, the gravitational spikes, the distortions, the disappearances, was tied to this project. And now, thanks to her research, she and Ethan were caught in the middle of a conflict spanning worlds. "What do you want from us?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with suspicion. Daniel met his gaze steadily. "Your help. We need to find a way to close these portals permanently. Otherwise, things are going to get much worse for everyone." As Daniel spoke, Laura realized the enormity of the task ahead. She had always dreamed of uncovering secrets about the universe, but she never imagined it would lead her here. Now, with the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance, she knew there was no turning back. Little did she know, her journey was only beginning. Laura Monroe sat at the edge of her seat, her hands trembling slightly as she flipped through the documents Daniel had given her. The words on the pages were overwhelming. Technical jargon about quantum mechanics, equations that looked like they belonged in a science fiction novel, and grainy photographs of machines that seemed too advanced to be real. But what struck her most was the final section, a list of incidents linked to the portals. Ships disappearing, strange energy readings, unexplained phenomena, all of it matched what she and Ethan had been investigating. Ethan leaned forward, his brow furrowed as he studied one of the photos. "This is insane," he muttered. "You're telling us that humans created these portals, and now aliens are getting caught in them?" Daniel nodded grimly. "Not all of humanity, of course. Just a small group of scientists working for the government. They thought they were making something revolutionary, a way to explore the universe without ever leaving Earth. But they didn't account for the risks." "What kind of risks?" Laura asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The portals aren't stable," Daniel explained. "They open and close unpredictably, sometimes pulling in anything nearby. At first it was just satellites or debris. Then ships started vanishing. We don't know how many alien vessels have been affected, but based on your research, it's more than we realized." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. She had always dreamed of discovering proof of extraterrestrial life, but this wasn't what she had imagined. Instead of peaceful contact, humanity's experiments had caused chaos and possibly danger for beings from another world. "So what do we do now?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. "If these portals are still active, we need to shut them down before anyone else gets hurt." Daniel sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "That's easier said than done. The original equipment used to create the portals was destroyed years ago, or so we thought. If some of it is still operational, it could be anywhere. And even if we find it, closing the portals might not be enough. We need to figure out how to stabilize them first, or we risk creating even bigger problems." The next morning, Laura and Ethan met with Daniel again, this time in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, dusty shelves lined the walls, stacked with old tools and forgotten supplies. In the center of the room stood a large, metal table covered with maps, blueprints, and scraps of paper. Daniel spread out a map of the United States, pointing to several locations marked with red dots. "These are the sites where Project Gateway conducted its experiments," he explained. "Most of them were abandoned after the program shut down, but there's a chance some of the equipment is still intact. If we can locate it, we might be able to use it to control the portals." Laura frowned. "But won't that make things Worse, what if someone uses the portals for, I don't know, war or invasion? That's why we have to act fast, Daniel replied. If we don't take control of the situation, others will. There are people out there who would love to get their hands on this technology, and they won't care about the consequences. Ethan crossed his arms, clearly skeptical. How do we even start looking? These places could be buried under miles of dirt by now. Daniel handed them each a folder containing detailed information about the sites. Start with the closest one. It's in Montana, about 6 hours from here. According to the records, it was one of the last facilities to operate before the project was shut down. If any equipment survived, it'll probably be there. Laura glanced at Ethan, who shrugged. Guess we're going to Montana, he said. The drive to Montana was long and quiet, broken only by the occasional comment from Ethan about the scenery or the snacks they picked up along the way. Laura spent most of the trip staring out the window, lost in thought. She couldn't stop thinking about the Zorathians, their stranded ship, their confusion, their fear. Were they truly trying to understand what was happening near Earth, or were they planning something more dangerous? She wanted to believe they were peaceful, but she knew better than to trust blindly. When they finally arrived at the site, it was little more than a crumbling concrete building surrounded by overgrown weeds. The entrance was blocked by a rusted, chain-link fence, but Ethan managed to pry it open with a crowbar. Inside, the air smelled musty and the floor was littered with debris. Dust motes floated lazily in the dim light filtering through cracked windows. This place looks like it's been abandoned for decades, Ethan remarked, kicking aside a piece of broken machinery. Maybe that's the point, Laura said. If no one thinks it's important, they won't bother checking it. They split up to search the building, calling out to each other whenever they found something interesting. After nearly an hour, Laura stumbled upon a hidden door behind a pile of crates. It led to a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Her heart raced as she called for Ethan, and together they ventured down into the basement. At the bottom, they discovered a room filled with strange devices, metallic panels covered in dials and switches, glowing tubes connected to humming generators, and screens displaying static-filled images. In the center of the room stood a massive machine, its surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with light. This has to be it, Laura whispered, her eyes wide with awe. This is what creates the portals. Ethan approached cautiously, inspecting the controls. Do you think it still works? Before Laura could answer, the machine suddenly roared to life. The lights grew brighter and the floor began to vibrate. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Panicked, Laura searched for a way to turn it off, but the controls were unfamiliar, and the labels were written in a language she didn't recognize. Step away, Daniel shouted from the doorway, startling them both. He rushed into the room, clutching a small device that looked like a remote control. With a few quick presses, he managed to deactivate the machine, plunging the room into silence once again. How did you know how to do that? Ethan demanded, his voice tinged with suspicion. I've seen this kind of equipment before, Daniel admitted, back when I was part of the project, but we don't have time to explain everything right now. We need to move quickly. Unbeknownst to them, their actions hadn't gone unnoticed. High above Earth, the Zorathian Council convened in an emergency session. News of the reconnaissance ship's disappearance had spread, and tensions were running high. Joshua, the lead analyst, presented new data, showing increased activity near the planet's surface. It's clear that the humans are involved, he said, his tone urgent. Their experiments are destabilizing space-time, creating ripples that affect our ships. If we don't intervene, the situation will escalate. Council Leader Varen nodded gravely. What do you propose? We send a message, Joshua replied. A non-aggressive signal to establish communication. If the humans realize we mean no harm, they may cooperate. And if they refuse? Another council member asked. Then we prepare for the worst, Varen said firmly. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Back in Montana, Laura and Ethan worked alongside Daniel to decipher the machine's functions. They learned that it operated on principles of quantum entanglement, using energy waves to bend space and time. While fascinating, it also posed immense risks. One wrong move could tear open another portal, or worse, collapse the entire system. Night fell. Laura stepped outside to clear her head. The stars shone brightly overhead, reminding her of the vastness of the universe. She wondered if the Zorathians were watching them right now, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Ethan joined her a moment later, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You okay?" he asked gently. Laura nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "I just keep thinking about those aliens. Are we helping them or making things worse?" Ethan hesitated before answering. "We're doing the best we can with what we've got. Sometimes that's all anyone can ask for." Inside the building, Daniel continued studying the machine, his face illuminated by its faint glow. He knew they were running out of time. If they couldn't stabilize the portal soon, the consequences would be catastrophic for both worlds. Little did they know, help and danger were closer than they realized. The night was cold and quiet in the Montana wilderness, with only the sound of crickets breaking the stillness. Inside the abandoned facility, Laura, Ethan, and Daniel worked tirelessly to understand the mysterious machine they had discovered. The glowing panels and humming generators cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the room feel alive with energy. Despite their progress, frustration was starting to creep in. "I don't get it," Ethan muttered, flipping through a notebook filled with scribbled equations. "We've figured out how this thing works, but we're no closer to shutting it down. If anything, messing with it might make things worse." Laura sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. She had been staring at the machine for hours, trying to decipher its patterns and predict its behavior. "Maybe we're looking at this the wrong way," she said. "Instead of trying to shut it off completely, what if we stabilize it? Make sure it doesn't open portals randomly anymore." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "That's a good idea. But stabilizing the system isn't easy. It requires precise calibration. And even then, there's no guarantee it'll work. One mistake, and we could trigger another portal, or collapse the whole network." Ethan frowned. "And by collapse, you mean catastrophic failure," Daniel replied grimly. "Imagine tearing a hole in space-time that swallows everything around it. That's why the project was shut down in the first place." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. The stakes were higher than she had imagined. They weren't just dealing with random disappearances. They were standing on the edge of something far more dangerous. Still, giving up wasn't an option. Every second they delayed meant more ships could vanish, more lives could be lost. "We need to try," Laura said firmly. "If we can stabilize the portals, maybe we can prevent further damage. And if we can communicate with the Zorathians, maybe they can help us figure this out." Meanwhile, high above Earth, the Zorathian Council was growing impatient. News of the reconnaissance ship's disappearance had spread throughout their fleet, fueling fear and anger among the crew members. Some argued for immediate retaliation, while others urged caution. Joshua stood before the council once again, presenting his latest findings. "The humans are experimenting with technology they don't fully understand," he explained, gesturing to a holographic display of Earth. "Their actions are destabilizing space-time, creating ripples that affect our ships. However, recent data suggests they may not be acting out of malice. In fact, they seem to be as confused as we are." Council leader Varen leaned forward, his glowing blue eyes narrowing. "Are you suggesting we trust them?" "I'm suggesting we communicate," Joshua replied. "If we send a non-aggressive signal, we might be able to establish contact. Once they realize we're not a threat, they may cooperate." Varen hesitated, weighing the risks. Trusting humanity was a gamble, but doing nothing was equally perilous. Finally, he nodded. "Prepare the message. But if this fails, we must be ready to act." Back on Earth, Laura and Ethan were testing a new theory. Based on Daniel's notes, they believed the machine could be programmed to emit a specific frequency, one that might interact with the portals and stabilize them. It was risky, but it was their best shot. "Ready?" Laura asked, her hand hovering over the control panel. "As ready as I'll ever be," Ethan replied. stepping back cautiously. Laura took a deep breath and pressed a series of buttons. The machine hummed louder, its lights flickering erratically. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a faint shimmer appeared in the air, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. "It's working," Laura exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. "The portal is stabilizing." But her joy was short-lived. Suddenly, the shimmer grew brighter, expanding rapidly until it filled the entire room. A deafening roar echoed through the facility. As the ground shook violently, Laura stumbled backward, shielding her face from the blinding light. "What's happening?" Ethan shouted, struggling to stay on his feet. Before anyone could answer, the portal collapsed in on itself, leaving behind an eerie silence. The machine powered down, its lights dimming until the room was plunged into darkness. "Well," Daniel said dryly, breaking the tension, "that didn't go as planned." While the trio regrouped, the Zorathian's message reached Earth. It came in the form of a low-frequency signal broadcast across multiple wavelengths, designed to catch the attention of anyone monitoring space activity. At first it went unnoticed, buried beneath the noise of satellites and radio waves, but eventually it caught the ear of someone who mattered. In a small observatory in Arizona, a young technician named Ryan was reviewing data when he noticed something unusual. Buried within the static was a repeating pattern, a sequence of tones unlike anything he had heard before. Intrigued, he flagged the signal and forwarded it to his supervisor, who immediately contacted military officials. Within hours, the signal was classified as a potential alien communication. Military analysts scrambled to decode the message, but progress was slow. Meanwhile, rumors of the discovery began to spread, sparking panic among government leaders. Fearing an invasion, they authorized a preemptive strike against the source of the transmission. Unbeknownst to them, the Zorathians were monitoring Earth's response. When their sensors detected the launch of missiles aimed at their fleet, Commander Kale knew they had little time to act. "They're attacking!" One of the crew members shouted, his voice laced with panic. "What do we do?" Kale clenched his fists, his mind racing. Retaliation would only escalate the conflict, but allowing themselves to be destroyed wasn't an option either. Then an idea struck him. "Send another message," he ordered. "This time include coordinates for a safe meeting point. Let's see if they're willing to talk." As tensions escalated between Earth's governments and the stranded aliens, Laura, Ethan, and Daniel realized they were running out of time. If the military launched an attack, it could trigger a full-scale war, one neither side was prepared for. "We have to warn them," Laura insisted. "If we can prove the Zorathians aren't hostile, maybe we can stop this before it's too late." "But how?" Ethan asked. "No one's going to listen to us. We're just a couple of civilians and a guy who claims to know about secret government projects." Daniel stepped forward, his expression resolute. "Leave that part to me. Have connections, people who can get us access to the right ears. But you two need to focus on fixing that machine. If we can show them we're capable of controlling the portals, it might give us leverage." Laura nodded, determination hardening her features. "Then let's get to work." Over the next few days, the three of them poured all their energy into repairing and recalibrating the machine. Using fragments of Richard's research and Daniel's knowledge of the original project, they managed to stabilize the system enough to generate a controlled portal. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. At the same time, Daniel used his contacts to arrange a meeting with key military officials. He presented their findings along with evidence of the Zorathians' peaceful intentions. To everyone's surprise, the officials agreed to hold off the attack, for now. On the appointed day, Laura and Ethan stood nervously in a secure facility, watching as the portal shimmered into existence. On the other side, a group of Zorathians materialized, their silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Among them was Commander Kale, his sharp green eyes scanning the room cautiously. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Laura stepped forward, holding out her hands in a gesture of peace. "We didn't mean to cause harm," she said simply. "We're sorry for what happened. Can we work together to fix this?" Kale studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Yes," he replied. "Let's begin." It was a tentative step toward understanding, but it was a step nonetheless. As the two groups exchanged information and ideas, hope began to take root. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could find a way to bridge the gap between their worlds and prevent disaster. But unknown to everyone, the true danger lay not in the portals themselves, but in the secrets buried deep within Project Gateway's past. And those secrets were about to come to light. The meeting between humans and Zorathians was tense but hopeful. Inside the secure facility, Laura, Ethan, and Daniel stood alongside military officials as Commander Kale and his crew stepped through the shimmering portal. The air crackled with energy, and for a moment everyone held their breath. Despite the language barrier, gestures of peace were exchanged, hands raised in surrender, nods of acknowledgement. It was clear both sides wanted to avoid conflict. Laura took the lead, speaking slowly and clearly. "We didn't know what we were doing," she said. "The portals were created by accident. We're trying to fix them now." Kale's translator device buzzed softly before relaying his response. "We understand. Your actions caused harm, but they also brought us here. Perhaps this is an opportunity to learn from each other." The words eased some of the tension in the room. Military officials exchanged wary glances but nodded in agreement. For now, cooperation seemed like the best path forward. Over the next few days, the two groups worked together to stabilize the portals. Using the machine in Montana, Laura and Ethan collaborated with Zorathian engineers to refine its controls. The aliens' advanced technology proved invaluable, allowing them to fine-tune the system and reduce the risk of random activations. Slowly but surely, the portals began to stabilize, their chaotic energy fading into a controlled hum. Despite the progress, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. She noticed Daniel spending long hours alone, poring over old documents and making secretive phone calls. When she finally confronted him, his expression was grim. "There's more to this than you know," he admitted. Project Gateway wasn't just about exploration. Some of the scientists involved had darker intentions. "What do you mean?" Laura asked, her stomach tightening. Daniel hesitated before answering. They weren't just opening portals to other places. They were experimenting with weapons, ways to weaponize the portals themselves. If someone gets their hands on that research, it could be catastrophic. Laura felt a chill run down her spine. "Do you think anyone else knows about this?" "I'm not sure," Daniel replied, "but we need to find out before it's too late." Meanwhile, Commander Kale shared troubling news with his human counterparts. While monitoring Earth's communications, the Zorathians had intercepted messages suggesting that certain factions within humanity were planning to exploit the portals for their own gain. These groups saw the technology not as a threat, but as an opportunity, a way to dominate both Earth and any alien civilizations they encountered. "This cannot happen," Kale warned. "If your people misuse this power, it will endanger not only yourselves but countless others." Laura nodded, her mind racing. "We have to stop them, but how?" Kale looked at her steadily. "By showing them there is another way. Together we can demonstrate that cooperation is stronger than domination." With renewed determination, the team devised a plan. Using the stabilized portal, they would invite representatives from Earth's governments and scientific communities to witness a demonstration of peaceful collaboration. The goal was simple: prove that working with the Zorathians and understanding the true nature of the portals was far more beneficial than attempting to control or weaponize them. The day of the demonstration arrived and the facility buzzed with activity. Scientists, politicians, and military leaders gathered in the main hall, their expressions a mix that of curiosity and skepticism. On one side of the room stood Laura, Ethan, and Daniel. On the other, Commander Kale and his crew. Between them loomed the portal, its surface shimmering faintly like liquid light. As the crowd watched, Laura stepped forward to address the assembly. "What you see here is the result of teamwork," she began. "Humans and Zorathians working together to solve a problem neither of us could face alone. This portal isn't a weapon. It's a bridge, a chance to connect with others, to learn, and to grow." She gestured to Kale, who stepped up beside her. Through the translator, he added, "Our two worlds may be different, but we share a common goal: survival." By uniting our knowledge and resources, we can ensure a safer future for all of us. To illustrate their point, the team activated the portal, creating a stable connection to the Zorathian mothership. On the view screen, images of the alien vessel appeared, showcasing its advanced design and peaceful purpose. Gasps rippled through the audience as they realized the potential for mutual benefit. But just as hope began to take hold, chaos erupted. A group of armed intruders stormed the facility, led by a man in a dark suit who identified himself as Agent Cole. His voice was cold and commanding as he addressed the stunned crowd. "You've made a grave mistake," he declared. "This technology belongs to Earth, not to aliens. Stand down or we'll take it by force." Panic spread through the room as guards rushed to block the intruders. Shots rang out, and the sound of scuffling filled the air. Laura grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward cover, while Daniel moved to protect the control panel. Cale, however, remained calm. With a swift motion, he signaled his crew, who deployed a shield around the portal, preventing anyone from tampering with it. "Violence solves nothing," Cale said firmly, stepping forward. "You seek power, but power without wisdom leads only to destruction." Agent Cole sneered. "And what would you know about power, alien? You're stranded here, at our mercy." Before Cole could act, the portal flared brightly, illuminating the entire room. From the other side emerged reinforcements, Zorathian ships hovering above the facility, their presence undeniable. Realizing they were outnumbered, Cole and his men reluctantly surrendered. In the aftermath, the true scope of Project Gateway's secrets came to light. Documents revealed that rogue elements within Earth's governments had indeed been pursuing dangerous experiments, including attempts to weaponize the portals. Thanks to Laura, Ethan, and Daniel's efforts, these plans were exposed and dismantled. With the immediate threat neutralized, focus shifted to rebuilding trust. Humanity and the Zorathians agreed to form a joint council dedicated to studying and managing the portals responsibly. In exchange for sharing their knowledge, the Zorathians offered advanced technologies to aid Earth's development. As the weeks passed, Laura reflected on everything that had happened. She had started as a quiet astrophysicist, content to study the stars from afar. Now she was part of something much bigger, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of hope for the future. Ethan joined her one evening as she gazed up at the night sky. "You did good, you know," he said with a smile. "Not many people can say they saved two civilizations." Laura chuckled softly. "We didn't do it alone. Without the Zorathians, and without you, I wouldn't have made it this far." Ethan shrugged. "Still, you deserve credit. You believed in this when no one else did." Above them, the stars twinkled brightly, their light stretching across infinite distances. Somewhere out there, new mysteries awaited, new challenges, new opportunities. But for now, Earth and the Zorathians had taken their first steps toward a brighter future. And Laura knew deep down that this was only the beginning.